Conferencing.
Madam Secretary Duby. Are we on the record? Good morning. This is the time and place set for the regularly scheduled meeting of the Nevada Taxicab Authority Board. It is Thursday, August 26, 2021 at the hour of 9:31. I note for the record that we have a quorum with members Thompson, Groover, and myself, and Reeser available, and I don't know, is Ms. Rodriguez with us by telephone yet?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
That is correct.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good morning.
Madam Secretary, Member Thompson, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, are we in compliance with the open meeting law? Are we in compliance?
Yes.
All postings were made for the open meeting law and we are in compliance?
All postings were made, yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 2 is public comment pursuant to Nevada revised statute. This time is set aside for the public to make comment, bring any matter to the attention of the board that they believe we should consider. No action may be taken on those items not agendized. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the board? Seeing none, we will close public comment. Agenda item 3 is election of chair and vice chair. At our last meeting, I indicated to the members I would confer with Director Reynolds concerning his and the governor's views on the election of a chair and a vice chair. Director Reynolds concurred with me that there is no Nevada law on this subject. He encouraged us to consider curing that, which we will talk about later. In the absence of either statute or regulation setting forth how a chair and a vice chair are to be selected, for deliberative body, Robert's Rules of Order would apply. And under Robert's Rules of Order, the deliberative body may select how it wants to govern itself with a chair and a vice chair. My recommendation to the board is that we elect today a chair and a vice chair, and I will open it up for discussion, questions, or action by members of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment that it's good to have an attorney back on the board again. And we haven't had that since member Aguilera left probably a year and a half ago. And I believe that position and that amount of knowledge is important to have for a person sitting as chair.
Well, thank you, Member Groover. I think some people might take umbrage with the fact that a lawyer is necessary, but I appreciate the comment. Member Thompson?
I don't fully agree with Mr. Gruber's comments. However, they do make sense. And so I have no further comment other than the person who is the chair will have to spend a fair amount of time in that job. You'll need to be at the taxi authority offices several times a week, meeting with the administrator and discussing issues, and meeting with the owners of the cab companies and discussing issues. So whoever is the chair, they will have to spend a reasonable amount of time on that job.
Ms. Rodriguez, do you have any thoughts or ideas or inclinations?
Well, I agree with what both comments have been made, and I do think it is a giant resource for us to have an attorney. You are very knowledgeable and have presented things about case law that really help us to make our decisions. So, that's what I'm leaning towards. And I don't have any experience on this board, although I'm on another board. And it is very important that people that step up to this position are going to be engaged all the time.
My comments are that however we proceed, I think we need to put in position, as do many public bodies, a vice chair in case the chair is not able to attend and/or is incapacitated in some way, so that the business of the board is not impaired. So with that, I would entertain a motion to elect a chair.
This is Member Groover. I would nominate Dan Reeser for chair.
Is there a second?
Mr. Member Thompson, I will second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Next item of business is vice chair. Is there somebody who would like to serve in that capacity? Or do we select them by motion?
Member Thompson, do you have the time to do that?
I am less inclined to do the vice chair. I'm not quite sure what that entails, to be honest.
It will entail being the chair in the absence of.
Well, yeah, I understand that. But in discussions with the administrator and the taxi companies, it's not clear to me what his job would be. Are you interested in that job, Mr. Gruber?
Well, I think we need to ask Board Member Rodriguez if you're not. I have a very busy schedule for at least the next 6 months.
Ms. Rodriguez, do you have an inclination to be vice chair?
I would love to in the future. However, at this point, same thing. I'm very busy. I'm on a national board, and I just started a small business, so that's really keeping me busy. But I can help in any other way, with the vice chair or chair, if you need the third person to help unofficially.
Well, since we've eliminated most people on this board, perhaps I should step forward and say, I'm willing to do this.
Would somebody care to make a motion to lock that in?
I'll make a motion to nominate Board Member Thompson as the vice chair.
Ms.
This is
Rodriguez?
Cindy Rodriguez. I'll make a second.
Thank you. On discussion, to alleviate the concerns about what the role of a vice chair would be, let me tell you that when we get to future agenda items under 9E, I will be asking the administrator's assistants and the Attorney General's office in drafting a regulation that defines how chair, vice chair are selected and what their roles are, which was a recommendation of Director Reynolds, so that this issue do not arise in the future. So I think that issue will ultimately be resolved in the next few months, if that's helpful.
And I would assume that if these regulations are unacceptable, you will accept my resignation.
Certainly. Is there any other discussion or comment on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 So be it. We have a chair and a vice chair, so we can conduct business. The next item is agenda item 4, discussion and possible decision regarding taxi cab companies having a fuel surcharge. This is for discussion and action, possible action. Madam Secretary, this matter was published in the local newspaper, correct?
Yes.
Affidavits of publication are available for inspection to any member of the public. Is there any member of the public who wishes to review the affidavits of publication? Seeing none, as the presiding officer for this proceeding, I will deem the matter duly noticed and available for action. The public notice provides that the business that may be conducted pursuant to this agenda item is the discussion and possible decision regarding taxicab companies adding a fuel surcharge. Preliminarily, there are a number of intervention applications in connection with this matter. The record should reflect are interventions of Whittlesey Blue Cab and Henderson Taxi, Desert Cab and Virgin Valley Cab, Deluxe Cab Service, Nevada Yellow Cab, Nevada Checker Cab, Nevada Star, YCS Acquisition LLC, 21st Century Taxi LLC, Cab Transport LLC, and Taxi Transport LLC. I also reviewed in the paperwork that there was a intervention on agenda item 4 by Boulder Cab. If there are no objections by members of the board, as presiding officer, it is my intent to grant the interventions. And in doing so, I will note for the record that my recommendation to the board to do so is not an endorsement of the arguments, the timeliness, or other procedural particularities of those interventions, but rather that there are no oppositions to those interventions. And so therefore, there's really nothing for us to adjudicate. And given the posture of the agenda item, I see no precedential effect to granting the interventions. So that would be my recommendation if the board is so inclined.
Do we need a motion on that?
I think I would prefer that.
I would make a motion that we accept the interventions as submitted.
Do I have a second?
This is Cindy Rodriguez. I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to grant the intervention petitions. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Seeing none, the interventions are granted. Correct me, Administrator Decker, but staff has no affirmative presentation on this matter.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. The agency was requested to add this agenda item, but is not pursuing the item itself.
Then, with the board's pleasure, I'm going to just call the interveners in the order provided by Madam Secretary for any comments or presentations they want to make, and the first would be Whittlesey Blue and Henderson Taxi.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Cheryl Gibbons on behalf of Whittlesey Blue Cab and Henderson Taxi. And you'll excuse me when my glasses fog up because I just haven't managed to make any of this work. We filed our petition due to the current gas prices. Back in 2015, the last board order referencing a fuel surcharge signed by the administrator and board members at that time granted a 20-cent per mile fuel surcharge once fuel prices exceeded $3.25 on average in a 30-day period. We've seen prices much higher than that since March of this year. Based on that board order, which is attached to my petition to intervene and signed by Ileana Drobkin, the chair at the time, this was to be an automatic fuel surcharge, meaning that once gas prices had exceeded the $3.25, the taxi cab industry had the ability to then add that 20-cent per mile fuel surcharge. Once gas prices fell below $3.25 for a 30-day period, then that fuel surcharge was to be removed, and the authority was given to the administrator to have that automatically happen as well. Back then, from 2003 to 2015, meter changes were very difficult to do because they had to be done by hand by the authority and actual lead meter seals attached. Now, with the technology that we have available to us, Captain, who supplies probably 80% of the industry's meters, they can actually change the rates, verifying that with the authority on an automatic basis. So it relieves the taxi cab authority from having to send inspectors out to actually run the metered mile and change the meters and then reseal them. This can be done in conjunction with Mr. Decker to eliminate the additional expense the taxi cab authority used to have to endure in order to do a meter change. I've also attached the U.S. Department of Energy DPAD 5 rates. Now, this authority had accepted PAD 5 as their measurement to determine when that trigger would be met. That was accepted by the authority because your sister agency, the NTA, has accepted that and actually has that in the NACs for an automatic fuel surcharge trigger for charter limousine rates. We would ask that this board grant the taxi cab companies the ability to go ahead as soon as practical and make their meter changes to add the 20-cent per mile, due to the fact that we should have been before this authority asking for this the first week of April. And for my company specifically, my drivers as well as the company has lost in paid mile revenue over $77,000 worth, simply because we failed to come before this board and ask for this automatic order from July of 2015 to be implemented. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I have one. Why the delay? I mean, you knew the prices went up in April. Why did we not get this before? In fact, I'm not even sure why we're being asked, since there's a precedence here.
Well, and I would agree with you, Member Thompson. However, when we started talking amongst ourselves about coming before the board, and I did some research, and I found out that, oh my gosh, we actually had this on the books. We'd forgotten about it, and we have all new board members at this time. There's no one on this board or in a position of authority, with the taxi cab authority, that was here then. So we felt it only appropriate to bring it before the board, make everyone aware of what the standing order is regarding the fuel surcharge, so that everyone is fully aware of what the intentions are. We're not trying to get something that wasn't already on the books and move forward in a very informed manner.
All right, a follow-up question, if I may. Are all of the cab companies forced to put in this increased charge,
Well,
or is it selective?
taxi cab rates are mandated by this authority. No one can charge more than what this authority would grant as far as any rate structure. If any cab company would choose of its own volition to charge less than what this authority would mandate, that would be their own decision, although I doubt very seriously anyone would be willing to do that.
Well, yeah, there are other factors, one of which is that you're having a lot of trouble meeting the rates of the Uber and the Lyft companies because they don't pay medical and pensions and that kind of thing. So this makes the situation a little worse. On the other hand, you don't want to lose money either. So I can understand the pushing and the pulling here. And so I would be inclined to allow other companies not to do it if they wish not to do it. I don't know why they would, to be honest.
It would be totally their business decision on their
Sure.
part whether or not they wanted to implement a rate increase.
All right, I think you've answered all my questions there.
If I might interfere, this is bound by a tariff, isn't it? I mean, this is a set rate that we have to go by, one for all for one.
Yes.
And so
it does force them.
yeah, and then that way we would have companies undercutting each other, which is not good. So if we're going to go by a tariff, we need to stick by the tariff.
And I would agree with you, Member Groover, with respect to the actual metered rates. A fuel surcharge, I don't know how that would fall into that, although, like I said, I can't imagine any company not wanting to charge a fuel surcharge, considering that the prices right now, the latest PAD 5 showed it at $4.06 per gallon. So, pretty high up there. And the actual board order that was issued in 2015 states that the 20 cent per mile is for $3.25 to $4.25 per gallon. That if the cost of fuel rises above $4.25 for any period of time after that initial 20 cent fuel surcharge, that we are bound to come in and meet and discuss a second tier.
So this was actually revisited in November of 2016, I think the month before I came on the board. And at that point, there was a discussion whether the price point was going to be $3.11 a gallon or $3.25. And Mr. Schwartz, I believe you made some comments in that meeting on that. But our price point we're considering today is $3.25 a gallon.
That was the last time a board order was issued saying that it was an automatic trigger for the fuel surcharge. There's not been a board order since that definitively changed that.
Okay.
So in my opinion, the trigger is $3.25, not $3.11.
Okay.
Ms. Rodriguez, Member Rodriguez, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I think it's a reasonable request.
I have one last comment. We've gone away from pricing this with the California index, correct?
Incorrect.
Completely.
Incorrect.
Incorrect.
The order, the order provides that it is the PAD that includes
The
California.
West Coast PAD 5 that includes
Okay.
California. There were some discussions. There was a financial analyst on board TA staff back then
That
who
was
had made some
Jeremy
arguments to
Guerrero.
actually change it. But it was then determined that in order to change it, then the trigger would have to change. Instead of it being 325, we would need to change that trigger accordingly if we were to change the actual mechanism that we were looking at to review the actual rates. It was also agreed at that time that since the NTA has adopted the PAD 5 West Coast, including California, your sister agency, that we would stay in compliance with their table.
Okay.
So I want to understand a couple of questions. First, have you agree that this would be a tariffed rate, and if implemented, everybody has to charge it?
That would be my opinion.
And I believe, based on your affirmative, that you also would concur that what the board is actually being asked to do today is to confirm a existing order of the board.
Yes, sir.
You're not asking us to take any action that is inconsistent with the previous order.
That is correct.
Any additional questions?
I have one question. If the rate tilts back, you don't have to come back in front of the board. You go to the administrator,
The
correct?
administrator would have the ability to, once the price falls below $3.25 for a 30-day period, to remove the fuel surcharge by way of just a memo to the carriers.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's my reading of the order to members is that the taxi cab administrator just issues a notice that the surcharge is terminated.
Mr. Chair, if I may have a question. for
Yes.
Cheryl. How many times has this been implemented since the original order was filed?
The original order for a fuel surcharge was back in 2003. This particular one was literally when the board order was issued in July, was when the fuel surcharge went into effect. And there had been so many times where the fuel surcharge was on and then off and then on, and every time we had to go before the authority to ask for one. And then the amount of time that it took, have it placed on the agenda, have the board hear it, and then have the mechanisms put into place for the TA to go out and manually change meters, it took several months. So it was then that the existing board and Ileana Dropkin, the chair, stated that they wanted this to be automatic so that we wouldn't have to come before the board every time.
So the point at which the order became automatic, have you implemented a fuel surcharge since that point?
No, we have not.
Okay. So I would just submit to the board that there is an impact to the agency, and if the board is interested, I have my inspectors here to discuss what that impact would be.
We'll come back to you, Administrator, at the end of all of the intervener presentations for you to provide any supplemental or responsive information. Is that acceptable?
Absolutely.
Okay.
As a follow-up, Captain, which, as I stated, supplies nearly 80% of the industry's meters, does have the ability to modify the rates on those meters electronically with the authority's observation and, guidance, without actually having to manually go out and change meters like they used to have to do decades ago. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative of Desert Cab and Virgin Valley Cab.
Good morning, George Balaban, Desert Cab Company. Desert Cab and Virgin Valley are in support of Whittlesey's presentation. A couple things I wanted to add, answer some questions. Administrator Decker, while after that last order, there was never a surcharge implemented, but one was taken off, right? So it did actually happen that back then, I think in that fall, it went below 3 1/4, so we did go through that process as a result of this automatic order.
Gotcha.
The second thing I wanted to bring up is the fact that this, if we follow through with this old order, this is from $3.25 to $4.45 is the gas price range. So we'd also like some clarification when it gets to, if it, God forbid, it goes over $4.45 for 30 days, is the board want us to go through this process again like we're doing today, which we don't have a problem doing, or will it truly happen automatically and we just notify the administrator? We'd like to hear back from you some direction on how we want to do that if the next one was to come into place. Board Member Thompson, when you were speaking about the Uber and Lyfts and our rates, the reality is right now, actually, we're cheaper than Uber and Lyft.
Really?
Yes. Because they're struggling with the same thing our industry is as far as getting drivers back. They raised their rates to try to get drivers to come back. This also helps us get drivers back because drivers share in this. Cheryl spoke about the fact of what her number was if this rate increase had gone into effect in April, just for April, May, June, and July, for those 4 months, not counting August, that 20 cents would have put $165,000 into my Desert Cab drivers' pockets. The number of paid miles we did times the 20 cents is $325,000, of which they get half of that. So, I mean, it's a large number of money going to the drivers as well. So that's another reason that this is important to have this happen. Will help us get drivers back and to compensate drivers. So I wanted to bring that up. The other thing that I want the board to be aware of, it's just a technicality. Right now, we charge 23 cents every 12th of a mile, which is $2.76 a mile. When you add the 20 cents on, it becomes $2.96. That's not divisible by 12, so we're no longer going to charge 12. We're going to charge 37 cents every 1/8 of a mile. It's just the math of trying to get it a divisible number to 296. It doesn't really change anything, but I just thought you should know that that's just how it works out. So it won't be 23 cents a 12th. It will be 37 cents an 1/8 is what the new rates will be. It still turns out to be 20 cents a mile, but it just broke out differently.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. How is this going to affect the fixed zone rates?
That is the next agenda item, I believe, or
Okay.
one of them, so we're going to discuss that because
You're correct.
basically 1/3 of our rides are flat rate rides, so we need to discuss how we're going to do that because this right here does not affect the flat rate. The flat rate's the flat rate. It's not run on a mile, so those rates would not change based on what we're talking about right now.
So let me submit to the board that we requested that the zone discussion be put on the agenda for a very specific purpose related to extending it as its limited to a temporary, to an expiration date. So while it is kind of the same issue, it is also a separate issue in that the agency will be requesting of the board to do something very specific with the zone rate, not including or related to the fuel surcharge. So I submit that to you, Mr. Chair, in case you do want to discuss with Mr. Bell then the
So my inclination, Member Brewer, is that let's deal with the surcharge first, and then depending on what action we take on the surcharge, when we get to the flat rate renewal matter, we'll discuss what, if any, effect the decision we make on Agenda 4 has on Agenda 5, and take comment at that time.
So we will be asking for an increase in the flat rates because, again, 1/3 of our rides are either to or from the airport. So it's important that their compensation is given there, and we'll make that presentation on that agenda item. That is all. There's no question.
Any other questions of Mr. Bellman?
No.
Thank you. Nevada Yellow Cab et al.
For the record, Mr. Chair, Jonathan Schwartz, I just wanted to introduce myself. We haven't met yet. Welcome to the board. Good luck on your chairmanship. Hello, members of the board. It's been a while. I would just echo the comments of both Mr. Balaban and Cheryl. My only comment would be, it's our opinion that the fuel surcharge needs to be applied uniformly across the entire industry. Everyone needs to apply it. And with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions?
Well, I'm pleased to see that you are competitive with the Uber. I guess the question I've got, though, I mean, it costs them less because they don't have medical insurance, pensions, et cetera, et cetera. Do your drivers actually get less money than the Uber Lyft drivers with the same work? That's a weird question.
That's very
so you may
typical.
not know the answer.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I'd be speculating if I answered it.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
And
I'm pleased to
unfortunately-
see that you're competitive.
Yeah, unfortunately, they don't have a duty to report much of anything to the state, so
Exactly.
we'll all be a mystery. Thank you.
Thank you. Boulder Cab?
Mario Castro, GM, a Boulder Cab Deluxe Taxi, they're both the same. I want to put on record that I do agree with the industry with all the numbers they're showing today. I do disagree with, we need to charge equal, because that's going to open a whole can of worms. I mean, if people are going to shop around, that's our main basic in the industry, is like we're all charging the same. So I do agree if we're all staying the same. I do want to reiterate what George said, that Uber right now is more expensive. I should get a hobby instead of Google voicing what it costs from Henderson to Fremont. Right now, it's an average of $65. We're not even close. We can run Boulder City to Fremont for under that. So we're definitely under. As far as what I was pricing on the strip, the cabs are just the same as Uber Lyft. Now, when you get to the local areas, they play the surcharge game right now, which before they didn't have. So that's how they took our local area for pricing. But the drivers are definitely making more for us, because on Uber and Lyft, you don't calculate their maintenance, gas, right? So the driver 6 months later finds that out.
That's true.
They find all that out, and then they come back. That's why I always leave an open gate. You want to try a different company? Because in the trucking business, that was very common. You want to try somewhere else? You're welcome to come back. Which in the old days, the industry didn't apply that. And of course, we're hurting. But the industry is suffering of something that's not talked about. It's inflation. I'm a guy that works on cars, goes buy parts, and pretty sure the GM's somewhere else. But I'm the little guy, right? So a fan that used to cost me $120 to place, right now I'm paying $200 and something. And it's not here. It's in New Mexico, it's in New York, and I'm sure they're facing the same challenges, just in a bigger scale. But that's something that the board needs to, look that into consideration. And that's why this is important. It helps us a lot. And I'm the little guy, so I mean, the bigger guys got to be telling you bigger stories. But definitely, the inflation right now is an index of Arizona, Nevada, 9.5. I don't know if anybody followed that, but I'll keep it short. And thank you very much. If anybody has any questions.
Any questions?
I have one question. Your meters are different than the captain meters? Is
No,
that-
they're not.
They're the same?
We're the same.
Okay.
Any further questions? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other member of the industry or public wish to address the board on this agenda item?
My name is Desiree Dante on behalf of Lucky and Western Cab. We also support presentation of the other members of the industry. We currently run the curb meters, and our meters as well are able to do it all remote, so the meter seals are no longer necessary.
Any questions?
No, that answered it. Thank you.
No, thank you. Any other member of the public or the industry? Okay.
I got here a little bit late. I just wanted to make a public comment about something, see if there's something that you can do to help us as a cab driver.
On this agenda item,
Not this particular item, but I
we'll
just.
be taking public comment at the end of the meeting
Oh, yeah.
again, so you can address us then. That'll close the public hearing on this item. I'll bring it back to the board for discussion and deliberation. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Mr. Decker, thank you.
Oh, so that was an option for the board if they were interested in the agency impact or experience with this item. You're free to question my inspectors. However, if that's not an issue, you're obviously, I'm just making them available.
So does anybody have, well, I guess my question is, does that portend that there is an implementation problem?
I hope not, since this is something that the board may vote to confirm the previous order. It sounds like most of the companies are able to adjust their meters remotely or electronically. I believe that there might be some companies that are unable to do that. No.
I think that's a good question to ask. Are there any companies that can't do that, which may cause more work for the authority?
Is there any member of the industry present who can provide us any information on meters that would not be able to automatically comply with the surcharge?
Inspector Rick Kolstad with the Tax Cap Authority,
Would you,
speaking with Verifone and the other cab companies with the captain meters.
Rick, sorry, can you come up
Can
here?
you come up here and-
The mic is.
yeah, the mic. And you state your name and your position again.
My name is Inspector Rick Kolstad with the Nevada Tax Cap Authority. And with Captain and the DT5 meters, they can all do it remotely, electronically. Speaking with Eris, with the Verifone meters that Lucky, Western, and Nellis have, they can automatically do it remotely. Our situation is supplying the rate cards, which we've always done in a rate change to the cab companies. We have to get them made up because it has to have the rates on the rate card, so the writing public is aware. I also think that with the fuel surcharge implemented, the writing public needs to know about it, and they should have the fuel surcharge on the door in a visible and space that the writing public can see before they get into the cab. Back in 2019, the legislature gave the cab companies the ability to take the rates off the door other than the credit card fee that the writing public needs to be aware of. And I think if we're going to implement a fuel surcharge, the writing public needs to be aware that there is a fuel surcharge and the rates are going to be higher than what is in place now.
So the agency will have to requisition door signs that say fuel surcharge.
Fuel surcharge, 20 cents per mile.
So I think the agency is asking for some time to get that done, if the board was to.
If the board decides that that needs to be noticed.
Correct.
If you know Administrator, was when the previous surcharges were in place, was a surcharge shown on the door?
Yes.
Stickers?
Yes, they were.
But the rates were on the door as well.
The rates were on the door as well. Right now,
And now
some of
they're
the companies still have the full rates on the door and zero fuel surcharge. Now, if you're gonna implement a fuel surcharge, that needs to be available on the doors to the riding public, that they can see that the rates, there is a surcharge.
So the rates are actually on the door now?
No. Some companies
Okay, it would
do,
just be
some companies
surcharge.
don't. The board issued in 2019, the legislature did, that they could remove the rates from the doors, other than the credit card fee. And the credit card fee is on all the cabs, but if you're gonna add an additional fee to the charge on the meter, that needs to be in place on the rate cards, and it needs to be in place on the doors, where the riding public is aware of it.
But this charge will be on the meter.
It'll be on the meter, but how is the customer gonna know about it? How is the riding public gonna be aware unless they know that there's a fuel surcharge, that they're being charged a little extra than what they were paying the last time they took a cab ride?
Do they need to know this?
I think they do.
Okay. It seems to me that this just confuses them to say, there's an extra charge here, but you don't know what the base charge is to begin with.
Well, that's on the rate card that is in every cab.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can we hear from a member of the industry
Yeah, let's
on this, hopefully, to get
let's see if there's any further questions of this.
You wanna ask me any other questions?
just
You
hold
may
on a
want
minute.
to ask.
I would like them to supplement so we can kind of go back and forth if
Okay.
that's possible.
Would anybody, Cheryl?
Hi, Sherry. How are you, honey?
I'm good, how you doing?
Awesome. Cheryl Gibbons, again, for Wilkie and Henderson. The legislature, he's correct, the legislature did allow for the cab companies to remove rates from the doors. Having said that, there is no requirement to have the fuel surcharge on the door. The only requirement was for the $3 credit card fee to be posted on the door. In speaking with Yellow Checker Star Group and Desert Group, I cannot speak for the other entities, we are willing to, on our own dime, purchase a sticker that we can put on the bottom of the rate card that is inside the cab that says fuel surcharge in effect. And we can peel those off or black that out if, hopefully, the fuel surcharge comes off after the price has fallen below $3.25 for 30 days, if that satisfies the board.
No door. Good here.
No door.
Good for the agency. That's great for the agency. We're satisfied with that.
And the time frame to complete that would be,
Well, I would go back to my office contract, Patrick signs, and see how soon he could get us those stickers. And I'm assuming, if everybody else is in agreement, you would have to ask, obviously, the other companies. But those that are a member of the Cabot Group are indeed willing to go ahead and purchase those on our own.
Would it be, Ms. Gibson, in your opinion, that in any event it could be done within 14 days?
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
We wouldn't have to supply you guys rate cards like we always do?
Correct.
That's what I just said.
Yeah.
Okay.
No door sticker.
So does any other member of the industry think that 14 days would not be enough time to make a change on your rate card?
That seems possible.
Other questions?
no.
Other questions?
No.
Ms. Rodriguez, any other questions? Hearing none?
Thank you, board members.
Oh, no, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any other member of the public or industry wish to address the board on the matter? Okay, seeing none, I will now, Mr. Decker, do you have anything else?
I do not. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll now bring it back to the board for discussion and deliberation.
I like the solution of putting it on the sticker on the inside better than putting it on the door by itself.
I'm gonna,
No, I'm just, are we at the point where we want to make a motion?
well, what
to-
I was gonna do is kind of define the parameters of where I
Okay.
think we're at. I think that we are given the way the matter is agendized and what is before us, the posture is for us to determine whether the order of 17 August 2015 should be affirmed. And I say that because I want to. I've said it that way, but what my view is that this order is a currently pending valid order of the Taxi Cab Authority. It was never appealed. It therefore, under the Administrative Procedure Act, became a permanent and final order. There's nothing before us today asking us to amend, there's no application to amend this order. So as to the request that we have some kind of automatic implementation of an additional rate after $4.45 per gallon were to become the price for a 30-day or longer period, that is not before us. And the previous board did not take action on that. So I guess my view is that if the industry or the agency wanted us to take action on that, we would have to have an application before us to actually undertake that effort. Otherwise, my take on this and the minutes as provided to us by our staff and the history that staff provided us, very helpful. It shows pretty clearly to me that this was intended to be an automatic event that has become automatically applicable. I do want to say administratively that is, and this is just me commenting, administratively, I think that really devolves upon the agency to know that for 30 days the price has been hit, and then send out a memo and say, we think order is now available for you to implement. Like you would also give an order saying it's below 325 and it's no longer. And I only say that because you could have differences of opinion amongst who's counting the 30 days, is it business days, calendar days, and some kind of a dispute. So I think administratively I suggest that the agency consider that. But I think it's intended to be an automatic process. I will say, from my perspective, the action of the legislature in 2019 means that nothing needs to be on the door, no rate or charge, other than the credit card obligation. But this is a tariff rate under this order. That is the statutes and regulations that are cited, and therefore it is applicable to everybody, and everybody charges that rate as a tariff rate, and therefore it needs to be on the tariff cards. That's my view. So those are just kind of my thoughts on the matter, and open it up for any other discussion and motion if someone's so inclined.
One point of clarification, Mr. Chair. The order's in place and it says that it's automatic. Does that mean that it needs to come in front of the board every time, or that the administrator would be able to do that after a 30-day period of the fuel reaching a certain price range?
So this is just one board member's interpretation. My interpretation of this order is it is intended, and the minutes of the meeting at which it was adopted are pretty clear on this. It was intended that the agency could allow it to go into effect, and it did not need to come back to the board. To me, the intent was not to have this kind of a proceeding to implement the surcharge.
And I agree with that.
My only comment was, I think it's helpful to the industry that the administrator says, go, you can go now, and you have to stop now. That's just my thought on administrative efficiency. But I don't think the intent was to come back to us. What I interpret the order as to what would come back to us is if somebody wanted to propose something above the when you hit 445. That this order does not deal with. Any other thoughts, inclinations? Member Rodriguez, I know, having been on the phone before, it's difficult. Do you have anything?
No, I do not. Thank you.
I'll entertain.
I will say that I tend to agree with everything you have said.
So I would entertain a motion if somebody's inclined to make it, and I would suggest that the motion include that the individual certificate holder will make the change on their rate card and report that to the administrator.
Member Thompson, do you want to make it, or do you want me to?
I will make it. I would like to move that Chairman Reeser's comments be approved by the board. There were a number of them.
And I agree with that, in that I think we need to address the area of the fuel surcharge sticker being placed on the vehicle. Do we need to put that in here?
So if you want to second it and make a friendly amendment?
Well, yeah, let me make an amendment that we accept the order of August 17, 2016, and that we put that into place. Additionally, adding that the fuel surcharge sticker be placed on each vehicle by individual certificate holders, and that there is a change in the rate card placed into the vehicle. Does that cover that?
2015, I'd say.
I'm sorry, 2015, the order of August 17, 2015, not 2016.
Is there,
Um,
so
He had a motion on the table.
you did have a motion on the table, and
Did he want to accept the amendments as proposed?
I will accept the amendments as stated by Member Gruber.
now can I suggest an amendment? And that
Yes.
is to drop the requirement that there be anything posted on the outside of the vehicle by sticker. I don't think the legislature, I think the sticker needs to be on the rate card,
That's fine.
but not on the vehicle itself, because
Okay.
that, I think, as Member Thompson points out, is going to be extremely confusing if there's no sticker otherwise with any tariff rates on the outside of the vehicle.
I don't know that anybody reads the writing on the outside of the vehicle.
Well, as a consumer, I do from time to time just for grins. So do you?
So to clarify everything will go onto the new rate card that will be placed into the vehicle.
And not on the door.
Perfect.
I'm going to restate the motion as I understand it now to be sausage. The motion is to affirm the order of August 17, 2015, and to require that the certificate holders amend their rate cards by sticker or otherwise to show the surcharge having been put into place.
That I agree with, yes.
Okay?
That is my motion.
And I will second that motion.
Any discussion? Ms. Rodriguez?
No, I agree.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? The matter is approved. The next item on the agenda is a discussion and possible decision regarding zone flat rate renewal. This matter, Madam Secretary, was published in the local newspaper, correct? Affidavits of publication are available for inspection by any member of the public or interested parties. Does any person wish to inspect the affidavit of publication? Seeing none, notice of the hearing is deemed properly noticed and available for action by the board. There are interventions on file. My intent, as with agenda item 1 as the presiding officer, is to recommend that the board approve the interventions of Whittlesey Blue Cab and Henderson Taxi, Desert Cab and Virgin Valley Cab, Nevada Yellow Cab, Nevada Checker, Nevada Star, YCS Acquisition, 21st Century Cab Transport, and Taxi Transport LLC, with the same observation previously that granting the interventions, given the posture of this matter, does not accept any of the arguments for procedural compliance with those intervention petitions.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we accept the interventions as submitted.
I will second that motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The interventions are granted, and Administrator Decker, does the staff have any presentation on this particular matter?
So the previous order of December 2020 issued an expiration date for the three-zone pilot program, which currently exists now, which allows the, I believe it's primarily stripped to the airport, fares to be charged in zone format. Our understanding from the industry is that that's working well. From the agency's perspective, it seems to be working well for the public. And so we are, prior to, hopefully well prior to the order expiring in December, we are requesting that the board extend that order for at least another 12 months, in which time the agency would likely request that the board make it a permanent program. However, we would wait to see how that works once we get through some of the COVID recovery and if we have input from the industry at that point.
Anything
And that's
further
it.
from staff?
I'm sorry?
Anything further from staff?
Nothing further from staff unless the agency attorney would like to add, but essentially the agency is requesting that the program be extended for 12 months. That's all, sir.
Are we discussing a fair increase on these flat rates
Well,
at this point?
I'm not going to presuppose what somebody might want to present. I will tell you that the matter is not agendized for a change in rate. It is only agendized for the renewal of the current program. So I'm not going to, unless the Attorney General's office thinks I'm misreading what it's been noticed for, or that notice fairly allows a rate increase, I think it's probably just to renew the order of December 18, 2020. But I wouldn't foreclose industry comment by the interveners on this topic, which might edify us in a different way.
Mr. Chair, I would agree with your comment that it is agendized only as a renewal. I would caution any deliberation or any deliberation as far as a rate increase at this time, just because it's not agendized.
Okay.
Does that preclude discussion on it?
Does it,
It does not preclude discussion. Open meeting law says that you can't take deliberation or action,
right.
Right.
but you can discuss.
So, stated differently, we can let the interveners present what they want to present. It's what we do when we bring it back to the table.
Right.
Right.
But with the, Mr. Chair, with the caveat that I wouldn't, any board member should refrain from giving any opinion about
Correct.
the rate increase, if any.
So, just so that the board members are understanding that caveat by the Attorney General's office, we want to avoid any discussion amongst ourselves as to any rate increase matter, because one, it's not properly agendized, and two, if it were to be brought before us in a proper application for a change of rates or charges, we don't want to have prejudged that application before we've accepted evidence on it. Is everybody good with that?
I'm good with that.
Okay,
Understood.
very good. We have Whittlesey Blue and Henderson Taxi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I understand it, no discussion regarding the fuel surcharge being incorporated into the flat rates can happen at this time. I just want some clarification.
So, subject to the Deputy Attorney General correcting me, you can present whatever you want to present. We cannot.
I have never been given such a wide berth at one of these meetings
Well,
before.
consistent with your intervention petition, how's that? And relevant to the jurisdiction of the agency, and not defamation. But we've been counseled that given the way that this is agendized and the notice was given, the only thing we can discuss and deliberate on is a renewal of the December 18 order.
That having been said, I will defer to Mr. Balaban at Desert Cab with regards to what we as an industry were wanting this board to consider with regards to incorporating the fuel surcharge into the flat rate. Having said that, with regard to the pilot program that we've been continuing for some time, we believe that it has been advantageous to the industry, both from the driver's perspective and the customer's perspective. The word transparency and trying to develop these rates for nearly a year was overused, in my opinion, but yet that is indeed what has happened. We have found customers that appreciate the fact that they know what their rate is going to be when they get in the vehicle. I believe it's advantageous. There has been, even pre-COVID, a decrease in the number of complaints regarding long hauling to and from the Strip. So I believe it has served its purpose and has served us well. And we would ask that those continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Desert Cab and Virgin.
Good morning again, George Balaban, Desert Cab. First, we also support the extension of the flat rates. We support that. My second piece of business would be, this is now on the fuel surcharge. The order that was submitted back, that was passed back in 2015 for the automatic fuel surcharge, at the time that was granted, there were no flat rates. That fuel surcharge order basically said that we were going to put 20 cents per mile on all rides. 1/3 of our rides either come off or to the airport and are right now flat rates. So looking at the agenda, I assumed that we would address that under this agenda item, but it should have been addressed under the other agenda item because we have two different types of rides now. We have metered mileage rides as well as flat rates, but the fuel surcharge applies, based on the order, applies to all rides. So I don't know if that is, now that agenda item 3 has been closed, it cannot be reopened and to address this, because we need to address, again, it's 1/3 of all rides are either true or flat rates. So it's very important for the industry, the fuel surcharge gets talked about in regards to those 1/3 rides. So I don't procedurally know how, if we can go backwards, or if we're precluded and we have to then come before you at the next meeting and just basically go over this all again. So I don't actually know what to do. But
Mr. Chair,
we need
if I
to
might
discuss it.
comment?
Yeah.
I brought that up in the other item about that because I'd read forward and I didn't think that we were going to be able to cover what I was anticipating you wanted under that item. And it appears it's got to be re-agendized, unless there's a way you can see that it fits into the other item. I'm done.
I understand that. I think that question is posed to you, Deputy Attorney General, as to whether you think, procedurally, we can reopen a matter.
You can reopen the matter.
But the question is whether you think that the agenda is, whether agenda item 4 would allow us to increase a rate under the order that is being reviewed under agenda item 5.
So the notice says adding a fuel surcharge, so I think that's large enough in scope that if the cab companies wanted to discuss adding the fuel surcharge adding a fuel surcharge, then you guys could.
And that could be to the fixed rates that are under consideration in agenda item 5.
I would believe so, because agenda item 5 just merely states it's a discussion of the renewal of those zoned rates. It's not saying anything about a fuel surcharge or allowing you to discuss the addition of a fuel surcharge. It doesn't limit you as far as versus zoned rates versus metered rates.
Fair? So you had the right
But it seems
intuition.
premature. My other concern, Mr. Chairman, is the changing of signage at the airport and so forth and do we have it in all the hotels about the flat rates, or?
I don't believe it's in the hotel. If it's in the hotels, it wasn't supplied by.
I mean signage for prices, for the flat rate prices?
No. If it is there, the hotels put it in themselves.
Mr. Administrator, do you know where all we have signage for the flat rate prices?
I do not know. Do my inspectors know?
They should be implemented in every cab.
So, well, I'm talking about the fixed signage, such as at the airport.
Oh, at the airport, yes. As far as hotels, I have no idea.
Okay.
I would say, however, I would just submit as a related matter that I don't believe that Uber and Lyft have any fixed signage either.
No, they don't.
I'm going to suggest that we proceed to finish agenda item 5, and then I will entertain a request to go back into 4. But let's finish agenda item 5.
Good idea.
Within the parameters that the open meeting law allows us to.
Okay, as previously stated, I support the extension of the flat rate thing.
Nevada Yellow.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Jonathan Schwartz, I support the extension of the flat rate program, and I want to yield part of my time to Kimberly Rushton to address the matter of the fuel surcharge as applied to the flat rates.
Good morning, members of the Commission Board. I'm Kimberly Maxton Rushton with the law firm Cooper Levinson, appearing on behalf of the executive, or as the Executive Director of the Livery Operators Association, of which Yellow Checker Star is a member. I wanted to note a couple of things for the Chair and the Board's consideration. If you'll look in the order, there is a specific finding, and it's identified on page 9, it's starting at line 20, and it specifically states, Mr. Chair, members of the Board, that all other rates, charges, or fares of the certificate holders in the Taxi Cab Authority's jurisdiction remain the same as previously ordered and authorized by the TA. However, in the order, it specifies that that extra charge would be the credit card fee. So it's contemplated by your findings, but it's not spelled out in the order. And so if that does not provide the board with clarification or authority to move forward with adding the fuel surcharge today, consistent with the extension of the flat zone rates, another option would be to convene possibly a special meeting, understanding that pursuant to the open meeting law, you only need 3 days notice, and not including the date of the board meeting, but thereafter you could formally do it if you feel that this does not give you the authority to move forward today. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Ms. Rushton, which, I'm looking at the order, page 9, which paragraph were you citing?
Yes, sir, it's paragraph 14.
Where's that?
Kim, are you looking at the order for the credit card surcharge? Because there is a specific order from August 15 that references the fuel surcharge.
Ms. Rushton's citing to the order,
Pertaining to the flat rate.
flat rate order of December 9, 2019, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. About halfway through your materials under
Come down
number
there.
4.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, 5. The sentence of paragraph 14 reads, all other rates, charges, or fares of the certificate holders in the taxi authority's jurisdiction remain the same as previously ordered or authorized by the taxi cab authority. And correct me, Ms. Rushton, I think your argument is because one of those previously ordered and authorized was or was not a flat rate.
Yes, sir. So I would construe and respectfully argue the fact that what the order contemplates is the fact that not only did you have the credit card rate in effect at that time, but it also contemplates the fuel surcharge, which had been implemented and as previously agreed, has been in effect since 2015. And therefore, the findings note the fact that that order would otherwise still be recognized.
Or stated even more broadly that any order or authorized rate preceding December 9th, 2019 would be captured.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Ms. Rushton. I would argue, however, that the 2015 order regarding the fuel surcharge references the fuel surcharge being added to the metered mile, and that this board does need to reopen item number 4 and decide what that fuel surcharge would be and how it would apply to a flat rate. And that is not contemplated by either order, although authorized by both.
I concur with you, Administrator, that we're going to have to reopen 4. We can't take the action in 5, and that's largely because it's not agendized correctly, but the Deputy Attorney General said that 4 is agendized, so we'll go back to 4. So, but what I'd still like to do is finish the business of 5, which is the renewal.
Discussion. For the record, Mr. Chairman, Jonathan Schwartz, for the record again, we would just request that this be done in a special meeting so that we can agendize it pursuant to the open meeting law as expeditiously as possible, because we're literally losing a significant amount of gas dollars every single day.
So I I don't know that you're going to be disappointed. I think it will be happening in a few moments.
Thanks so much.
Given the counsel we've gotten from the Attorney General's office. Does any other member of the industry or the public wish to address the board on agenda item 5? Okay, members of the board, I'll bring it back to you for discussion, deliberation, and action. If any, I think what is squarely and simply before us on agenda item 5 is whether or not to extend the order of December 9, 2019 by, I'm sorry, is that correct? No. Bear with me, I'm sorry.
December 9, 2019.
December 18, 2020, actually. We're being asked to extend the order of December 18, 2020, which sets December 31, 2021 as the expiration date for the 3-zone pilot program by 1 year to 31 December 2022, correct?
Correct.
Administrator? So that is the singular action being asked of us in this agenda item. Is there any questions or discussion on?
Just one quick question. So we're going to extend the December 18th, 2020 order to December 31st, 2022.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. The relief requested by the administrator is to extend this for an additional year, at which time, when we get closer to the expiration of 2022, correct me, Administrator, if I misunderstood, the staff is likely to be recommending to us before that expiration date a permanent resolution of zone pricing.
Okay.
Instead of going by interim orders, which would probably be some kind of a rulemaking. I won't presuppose it's a rulemaking, but it may well be a rulemaking.
Ready for an order?
I'm ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion regarding the zone flat rate renewal, extending the order from December 18th, 2020 until December 31st, 2022. I'd just like to add, I think that the whole creation of the flat rate zones has been one of the most successful things that this board's ever worked with, and I strongly support it.
I'll make a second. This is Cindy.
There's a second by Member Rodriguez. Discussion. Member Thompson.
I was going to say, I agree with Mr. Gruber in that it was a very successful activity. I think it's good for the companies, it's good for the riding public, and for that reason, I support it strongly.
Member Rodriguez.
Agreed.
I likewise think that this order is good public policy for the traveling public and gives appropriate direction to the industry, and will support the motion. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against?
Aye.
None. So item 5 is approved. I'll entertain a motion to reopen 4.
I'll make a motion to reopen agenda item number 4 for further discussion and possible action.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion to reopen the agenda 4.
Is there any discussion on reopening agenda item 4?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 No opposed? We're back on agenda item 4. Is there any additional industry on behalf of the interveners, presentations or information you want to provide us? If not, just come up and say, I incorporate what I said under agenda item 5.
George Valadin, Desert Cab Company. I'm going to pass these out. We had, as just been discussed several times, 80% of the taxis in Las Vegas have the Captain meters in them. So we asked Captain to run us some data on the length of rides off of the airport to and from into each of the different zones. So this is what I'm going to present to you. So if you're looking on page 1, basically that first number up there, 2019, 3.68 miles, basically is telling you that in 2019, this is all rides, not just flat rates. The average ride in Las Vegas, the average trip was 3.68 miles. For the 2 months in so we did that in 2019, that was pre-COVID. To the right, the 3.6097 miles, that's the average ride, again, not just zones, for April, May, and June of 2021, so kind of since we've reopened. So just so you have an idea. Below that, you're going to see, again, these are the average rides off the airport, all rides off the airport, and then that aren't to the zones, and then the average going into each zone. So you can see how many miles. So if you look in 2019, the average ride into Zone 1 off of McCarran Airport was 4.3 miles. In Zone 2, it's 5.3 miles. Zone 3, it's 6.7 miles. The next page is just the same information, but it's off the rental car center, because the rental car center is zoned just like the airport is. So I wanted to present that to you to show you why we're suggesting that we would like to see fuel surcharge put in on the flat rates. You can look at the airport statistics that are put out every month, and we can see how many cab rides come off of the airport and compare that to how many rides the industry does. And when you do that calculation, 18% of all rides in Las Vegas come off the airport. You would assume 18% would go back if 18% came off. We've studied that, and really it's only about 15% that go back. I'm not sure how the other 3% get back, but they're not in cabs. Which is, again, adding those together, that means that 33% of all rides in the industry are either to or from one of the zones into the airport or the rent-a-car center. So, again, for us, that was where we determined, 1/3 of all rides, we need to have the fuel surcharge adopted into that. I wanted to give you this mileage so that you can see that, again, the Zone 1, pre-COVID, it was 4.4 miles, 5.3, 6.7 miles. And if we were talking 20 cents a mile times any of these numbers, you're over $1 or around $1. So we as an industry don't believe that you could have a flat rate that was going to be the flat rate, but then have some other charge that would change it on the mile, then it won't be a flat rate. So we need the flat rate to stay a flat rate. So unlike the other where we changed it to 37 cents an eighth, the industry is proposing that we increase to each of the zones. So right now the zones are $19 into Zone 1, 23 into Zone 2, and 27 into Zone 3. That across the board, each of those are going to go up $1. Again, because we want it to be a flat rate, the way it's agendized, I don't think we can just raise the rates. It has to say that it's an increase due to a fuel surcharge. But again, the flat rates would go to 20, 24, and 28, with a note saying this flat rate includes a $1 surcharge. And that would, like the rest of the order, come off, I guess, if the gas price goes under for 30 days. So anyway, I wanted to provide this data with you to show you that why we believe it would be $1. Again, maybe these would say it could be a little more, a little less, but again, we picked those rates because we were trying to get a round number. So we don't want it to be, $19.85 or something. So that's why we're proposing $1 across the board. It's going to probably be a little over in the zone 1, but under in zone 3. But that's kind of how we came up with the flat rates anyway, was trying to average it all. So that is what we would like to see happen. There's questions.
Well, without going through the arithmetic in detail, this looks reasonable to me.
That's what we were hoping.
I guess my question, looking at the statistics for, let's pick 2019, you're suggesting the $1, and maybe I'm missing something, sir, but if I take zone 1, it's 4.36 out of the airport. If it's 20 cents a mile, that'd be 80, a little over 80, it'd be 83 cents or something like that.
Correct.
And you're saying move it up $1.
In zone 3 would be 6.7 times 20 would be $1.30, but we're only going to charge $1.
And zone 2 is the 5, and so what you're saying is it should theoretically average out to both the traveling public and the industry with the $1.
It should average out to us. To the traveling public, no, because they're not traveling to each of the zones. That's just the reality of the way the zones are. If you're going into the zone, the guy that's at the very beginning of the zone is overpaying, and the guy at the end of the zone is getting a really good deal. When we put the flat rates, there's just no other way to do it. But so the customer, I guess if he came on 3 different trips and went to all 3 different zones, it would average out for him, but most of them aren't. So I can't say that it's going to be average to the customer, but if you put the customers in a group, it would be.
So let me ask it a little bit differently. If you don't think of the traveling public as one person taking one trip, but you think of the traveling public like the Public Utilities Commission might think of all people using electricity, all the people using cabs. Some of them are going to 3, some of them are going to 2, some are going to 1. So as a whole, holistically, on average, the $1 evens out across all of the traveling public. Is that a fair?
Yes, that we believe that to be the case. That, again, matched with the fact that we were looking to do it in actual dollar increments.
I agree. If the person only goes to the win,
right.
they're getting a deal. Additional question?
Well, I think issuing a rate like he's talking about, we don't want a rate of $19.78 or 80 cents. But I know that Mr. Ruckert was very involved in the setting up of this, and I don't know if he has any comments or opinion.
Yeah, I think first let's take, before we take staff comments, I'd like to get all of the industry positions in front of us so that the staff has the benefit of not having the shotgun.
Okay.
They can give us one. Is that?
No, that's fine with me.
So our proposal would be that, again, the postings that we're required to have in our taxi cabs, which for us were put on our trip sheets, would make that adjustment to raise those rates up $1 with a note saying that it includes a $1 surcharge. And then we would have to talk about how we would handle that at the airport. I believe that the signage at the airport was pretty much work from Brent Bell and the airport to get that done. So we would work with the airport to get that changed appropriately.
So your proposal is zone 1, 19 would go to 20, zone 2, 23 would go to 24, and zone 3, 27 would go to 28.
Correct.
Any other questions of this gentleman?
Thank you. Just one, Mr. Chair. Sorry, George. But so from what you just said, you're capable of adjusting the signage in the cars and at fixed locations, similar to what we talked about with the metered increase?
Yes, we should be able to handle that. The airport's the only place, but I believe, I don't want to misspeak, I believe that we handle that between the industry and the airport. I don't believe you did, so we will be upon us to get that handled as well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Well, one more question. If this does pass, what's the drop dead date that you would have to need to implement that?
As far as the implementation being pushed to the meters happens within a day. The way the meters work, once there's an order from you that we actually get the order, that day I'd be calling Captain. Captain would take a day to program it, push that out, and then it happens to each meter when they go to log in. If it was in the middle of a driver's shift, it wouldn't change, but when he logs out, the next person that logs in, it will go out and search for any updates like your phone would and update the meter. The signage inside the cars will take us, we'll begin on that immediately, waiting for the order, so that will all be done. It couldn't take us multiple days, a week at the most. Before the order's out, we'll be ready. And the signage at the airport, maybe that is a little bit different, but again, I would think if we start on it when we walk out of here, having heard the vote, by the time we get the order in, I think we should be able to have it done, because it'll take you time to turn the order around. Thank you.
Thompson, any other questions?
No, I have none. Thank you.
Ms. Rodriguez?
I have none.
Any other interveners or members of the industry have comments? Other presentations? Any members of the public? Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I understood that you wanted us to come forward to incorporate our previous testimony that we had given on agenda item number 4.
I'm going to just do it.
Okay, so doing that, and then we support Mr. Balaban's recommendations.
So before Ms. Rickert's presentation, I'm going to incorporate any materials, including Ms. Rushton's presentation that was given under agenda item 5 into agenda item 4 as well. Is there any objection by the board on that? Okay.
No.
Very good. Mr. Ricker.
Thank you, sir. David Rickard, Administrative Attorney for the agency. I mean, I think number one, to me, it's clear, obviously, this board does have the legal authority to modify the rates, including the zones. Although it is inartfully put on the agenda, I do think, given the confluence of the two items, I think it's within the board's power to consider it for, although, of course, I would defer to the Attorney General. My opinion and regarding this is, my concern is, having been involved in the process with the zones before, and Mr. Gruber, I know you were at some of those informal workshops that did occur. There was a number of data points that had been presented and a number of discussions that occurred before those rates were set, the 19, 23, and 27. And my concern at this time, and I'm not doubting the information that Mr. Balaban's presented, I have not seen it. As far as I know, it was not filed. My only concern is that I think a more thorough vetting, as what's suggested, I think, by NAC 706.909, which discusses applications for a change of rates, I think a more thorough vetting before a uniform move across the board would be appropriate. I certainly think it's within the board's power. I have no opinion regarding what the board should do. I just think that more information is recommended. That would be all I'd have to say.
Questions of Mr. No. I have one.
Sir.
I happen to concur with you on the fact that this matter is procedurally strangely before us. I will use that term. One would have thought that this would have been placed before us on an application or a petition. So I'm going to agree with you, but I think if I understand your bottom line analysis is that notwithstanding that procedural dereliction and perhaps the fact that we might not be fully informed as we would on an application, that it is not beyond our power to take the action.
Yes, sir, I do agree.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have just a couple. Mr. Balaban did some information on estimate of miles to these zones, and having worked in that, those do appear to be fairly accurate to you?
I have not seen them either. The first I'd heard of this was this meeting today.
So,
Mr.
Mr. Ricker, when the matter of the fuel prices and the fuel surcharge implementation was first brought up in 2015, are you aware that that was brought up through petition or an application?
I'm not sure, sir. I could review that order and see if it mentions, but I'm not sure. As I think it was Ms. Gibbons pointed out, this has been going back and forth from 2003 up until
The fuel surcharge, yes.
Fuel surcharge, yes, to
The
2015.
flat rates, it was brought about through various discussions at various meetings, and Chairman Olson has suggested we start workshops to discuss it, and that's just how it evolved.
And I guess that's what I was trying to confirm, is that procedurally it evolved in the same way that this current discussion today evolved with
Yes.
this. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Sir, to the extent I'm qualified to have an opinion here, which is not much, it looks accurate to me, but again, not my expertise. Anything else, sir?
No, the only thing I'm going to indicate is I frankly, I appreciate you making that comment, but as one member of the board, I'm not going to hold you to that because you had no opportunity to investigate this information. And you're not here as an expert witness, other than, you're not here as an expert witness at all. You're here as counsel. So, I don't want any suggestion down the road that you would be precluded from taking a different position than the one you just said.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else, Mr. Gruber?
That's it for me at this point.
Mr. Thompson?
No.
Ms. Rodriguez? Any further public comment to come before us on this matter? Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion, deliberation, and possible action. And I'll start by saying you were prescient about where we would end up on agenda item 4.
Mistakenly.
And I appreciate Ms. Rushton providing the background on that particular provision in the order.
So I guess my comment, Mr. Chairman, would be we're here to discuss the fuel surcharges.
Correct.
And those should apply, I think, across the board to everything that they do. And we do have two different ways of doing it. We have the metered rate and we have the flat rate. And I don't know of any other way to do the flat rate surcharge without making it very difficult for everybody to interpret what those charges are going to be, unless we incorporate the idea of what Mr. Balaban has recommended on this. And that's it.
Mr. Thompson?
I agree. I think my initial statement is, without going through the arithmetic in detail, it looks reasonable to me, and I support Mr. Balaban's suggestions.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Oh, I have nothing.
I'm inclined to support a surcharge of $1 on each of the rates. As to Mr. Rickert's comments, I will say I tend to agree that what would have been a more helpful process for the board would have been an application for the rate change with information, but given that the surcharge in this case is not a permanent action, but an action taken because of a market condition, I think that we certainly have the authority to make the rate change. I'm convinced that the $1 increase is correct, taking the industry as a whole and holistically looking at the traveling public as a whole, not the individual, actual individual ratepayer, but the ratepayers as a total in totality, that it averages out the pros and the cons, or the ups and the downs. I also concur with Member Gruber that this needs to be be capable of efficient administration, and the $1 rate is capable of that. And it also preserves the benefit to the traveling public of a flat fee. What would have been a nightmare is a 20-cent per mile rate on top of a flat rate, which would have, I think, caused a good number of justified consumer complaints. That is avoided here. And as was our discussion previously on surcharge, I think that this is capable of the administrator issuing a memo saying go, and the administrator issuing direction stop. I also think that it is important that the tariff cards indicate that there is a $1 fuel surcharge being applied, as was our discussion last time. So with those comments and suggestions, I would be in support of the motion if someone's so inclined to move on.
Just for clarification, so we will be addressing the fact that we are going to approve or not approve a surcharge of $1 on each zone, and that there will be a $1 surcharge fee added onto that. Okay.
Well, I don't, the base
On-
rate,
on
the
the
base
card.
rates are before us and they're not being changed.
Okay.
So all we would be doing, Member Gruber, is adding a $1 surcharge to the existing 19, 23, and 27 zone rates.
Okay.
Administrator.
In accordance with the same triggers and review factors as listed in the 2015 order.
Correct. Does everybody understand that? So it's the same, the 325, these come into effect at 325, and if for 30 days or more it falls below the 325, it comes off.
Okay. Ready for a motion?
I am.
think. I'll make a motion that we approve a $1 surcharge for each of the various zones. And that is in accordance with the August 17, 2015 order that has already been signed.
And can I ask?
And that surcharge be noted on the card of the car for each zone.
Is there a second on that motion?
I will second that motion.
Any discussion on the motion? Ms. Rodriguez? Hearing none. Gentlemen, any other comments?
No other comments.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It carries, so it's approved. We are on to agenda item 6, update from the industry. This is a discussion. Is there any, go ahead, Administrator.
So, Mr. Chair, the agency put this on the agenda in order to hear from industry because it's been of public interest, media interest as to whether or not whether there's enough transportation in Las Vegas for the traveling public and where we are in putting drivers in cabs and cabs and cab stands. And so with that in mind, if anybody from the industry has an update, I get asked constantly from the media as to how we get more cab on the road, and I'm speaking on your behalf, and so I'm giving you this opportunity to give me the talking points that you would like me to express to the media and to the board.
George Malaban, Desert Cab. All I can, not much different than at the last meeting, but I would say we are continuing to hire drivers back. We still are dealing with the issues that every employer in Las Vegas is dealing with as far as getting employees back. On top of dealing with employees to drive, we're dealing with employees that work in the other parts of our organization as well. So as we buy new taxi cabs to put them into service, we are short mechanics to put the cars into service. So there's challenges there. The ordering of new cars to turn into taxi cabs. I don't know if anybody's tried to buy a car, but it's very hard to buy a car right now, especially if you're buying them in quantity. So there are a lot of challenges, supply chains. I mean, it is getting a little better, but it's a very slow process, and the reality is when somebody walks between, by the time, in order to order a car, buy a car, turn it into a cab, that's not a quick thing. That's several months, if not longer, if it takes long to order. And then turning a cab driver, new person into a cab driver, that's a little quicker, multiple weeks. But I would say when I look at our numbers, we are putting out more cabs each and every day, but not a significant number, but slow improvements. Can't speak to the rest of the industry. And I think that the challenges for us are compounded because Uber and Lyft are having the same problems. So the people that were calling Uber and Lyft call Uber and Lyft and find out how much. So now they call a cab, and that's a good problem to have. But so we're working towards it, and I think it's a combination of just people, drivers, as well as getting cars put into service. So, but I believe it's getting better. So that would be my report.
George, yeah, how successful are we at getting cabs out into the suburbs? That's always been a problem.
It is. I would say it is for sure a challenge because the Uber and Lyft issue that I just spoke about, getting cabs into the suburbs was always a problem. It kind of dissipated as a problem because Uber and Lyft made it not a problem for us because they were servicing those people and they stopped calling us. But now that they've disappeared, the suburbs are back to calling us, and again, we struggle. And it comes down to, do you service one radio call or suburb call, and while you're doing that, you don't pick up 3 tourists on the strip? Somebody's not going to get served. So, I mean, it is an issue, and the drivers make their money, obviously, by the number of rides they do. So the driver realizes, I can run 20 minutes to pick somebody up, but during that 20 minutes, I could have taken 3 rides. Right. So it is a challenge for us. We have a universal dispatch system, the Yellow, Checker Star, Desert Cab, Virgin Valley, and Whittlesey Henderson. So we have 2,000 of us on one network, and we are providing service to the suburbs. But to be honest, it's not as good as it was pre-COVID. Our response times have gone up. It is a challenge. So we are doing it, but it's a challenge.
The reason I asked, I almost had to get a ride last week. I'm out in the suburbs, and I thought, my gosh, can I dare call an Uber? No, I have to call a cab, but they might not come. And so I was in a dilemma there. And so that's the reason for my question. It has nothing to do with our discussions here. Sorry.
It's been a challenge.
Mr. Balban, I see that the RTC is again wanting to compete with the cab companies and that they're going to be sending transportation to pick people up to take them to the bus stops. Has that had any impact on, or have you followed any of that?
I hear and see a lot of those things. To be honest with you, right now, there is more business than we can service. So I'm not seeing it because it's not hurting my business because we don't have enough cars on the street. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So eventually, yes, that's going to be bad for us, but right now, I mean, every little bit helps as far as if you're looking at just trying to service customers, because we are not doing a great job. But nobody's doing a good job. It's not just us. I mean, restaurants, any place, it's difficult. So I'm not as concerned about those things right this second, but long term, sure, all that's going to hurt us. Thank you.
Mr. Brown, sorry, before you go, you said something interesting I just want to follow up on real quick, just to clarify for myself and the board. So we know that Uber and Lyft were prohibited from using surge pricing throughout the COVID emergency by the emergency order. The NTA recently exempted them from that so they can go back to surge pricing in order to help get cars on the road and rides out there for people. You mentioned that the prices with Uber and Lyft having gone up, that has increased the demand for cab at this point?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay.
Yeah, people, again, looking at our universal dispatch system, the number of neighborhood calls that we were getting pre-Uber, Uber came along and that radio business went down and down and down and down as those people went to call Uber because they were literally quicker than us, but way cheaper than us. Now fast forward and it's hard to get an Uber in the neighborhoods and they're very expensive. So those people, again, doing what anybody would do. They're going to call and find out, well, gosh, I used to take a cab, it was $20. They want $60. So yeah, so we've got a lot of people calling back in. The problem is we're struggling to service them as well. So
Thank you.
Jonathan Schwartz, Yellow Checker Star. I'll just echo George's comments. The biggest problem we're having is availability of drivers. It's a massive, massive problem. COVID, too much government stimulus, in addition to, I don't know how much the board follows this, but if you read The Economist and several other periodicals, they're identifying sort of a generational reduction in the availability of employees for all industries, having nothing to do with COVID. And with sort of changes in what employees demand for employment, what they traditionally used to do in driving for a cab 10 or 12 hours a shift, people don't want to do today. People want extreme flexibility in their work. We're actually responding to that with our company and providing more flexible shifts so that we can get more employees in. You know, if they'll come in and work 4 hours, we'll take them for 4 hours. So we're doing everything we can, but it's very, very challenging. The other issue is it's going to come up, availability of cars. I mean, this chip shortage problem is an international issue, and it's something we're going to deal with all of next year as well. Normally you could order cars and receive them within 4 months or so. I think if you ordered a car today, you might not get it until June of next year. It's a challenge. So unfortunately, we're working hard at it, and we're brainstorming all the time as to how to motivate people to drive a cab. It's hard. Any questions?
Questions? Thank you. Any other members of the industry on agenda item 6?
Yeah, I want to make a public comment about this.
We're not.
But about this,
Okay.
the rest of this issue.
That's fine.
Okay.
You need to come up and state your name.
My name is George Ziegner. I'm a cab driver for a quarter of a century, a little over 25 years. And so I'm very over analytical, so I'd like to explain to you a few things. But first of all, I'd like all the companies to see if they can get a memo to all the cab drivers. If a cab driver goes to this new place, Area 15, if they come around the backside under the DI arterial where Rancho turns north, there's a blind one-way there. And my first or second ride, a car came down the one way, and I calculated I was only about 8 seconds from the point where we would have both had no chance when we saw each other and we had to head on. So I thought about, that's strange. Well, I've had about 11 rides there in the 2 months I was back, and 6 of the 11 I've seen cars try to go the one way down there, and it happened again to me. And then I saw the remnants of a crash that happened maybe the day before. So if the drivers are aware of this and go slow and on to the right when they approach and look to the left and see if there's a car coming, they won't have one. But if the drivers aren't aware, unsuspecting, 100% within a year, you're going to have a cab or two that have head-ons there. And nobody wants to see that. So that's my number one concern. Now, as far as the computer, there's a lot of great ideas. It was a great idea, the Cabot computer. And sometimes there's flaws in how they're implemented, and they need to do software adjustments to make it work the way it's designed. So if everybody can bear with me, I'll explain to you how it actually works, because you were talking about getting a cab. When you call for a cab, the idea was you're going to get the closest cab. He's going to be dispatched over there, and you're going to get better service. But the flaw is that what he said about drivers wanting to work on the strip, well, if I go out and I go extra couple miles and I take a radio call, there's a good chance they're going to have been frustrated, and I'm going to get there, and there's going to be nobody there. So now I've wasted a half-hour time. Company's made no money. I've made no money. I don't know what the cost is, but my guess is it's $8, $10 to the driver and the company for every no-go. So when I came back to work, one of the first couple of nights I worked, I had 5 in a row. So I wasted 4 hours, did no one ride. And then I realized that the flaw is, if I call a customer on the phone and say, you're going to be there? He says, yeah. Or he might say, oh, I canceled the ride. Well, now I have the option to cancel it on the computer. But when I cancel it on the computer, if I'm less than a mile away, it automatically sends it to another driver. Okay, and I can't change that. So now, when I take a call and I call them, they say, we canceled an hour ago. What am I going to do? I push the cancel button. Sure, you want to cancel? Yes. It goes back in the system, and the same thing happens to the next driver that takes the call. So the companies need to get together with the software company and figure out how they want to address it. And I talked to someone else, and they said, well, they tried to do something, but now the problem is the drivers just see a grocery store. Oh, I don't want to go there, and they cancel the call, and no one ever goes to the grocery store. So there needs to be, maybe you guys can figure out a policy on how to address it. I mean, obviously, sometimes a driver has to, for some reason, cancel a call, just like Uber and Lyft. But my thought is that maybe for the guys that take radio calls, they have a limit. You can cancel 5 calls a month or whatever, so you're not constantly just looking for the good calls and canceling the bad calls. Because that's what drivers were doing, and that's why they jammed the system so that I can't cancel a call without sending it back out. So I think that is a big issue that is costing the cab companies a lot more money than they realize. And if it were addressed, and the other point is, just based on the drivers I have talked to, there's an on button and an off button for the dispatch. So if there's say 1,500 drivers out there, my guess is at any given time, less than 200 have them on. So they don't even get any calls because they don't even want to waste their time. So now you call for the closest cab, you're not getting the closest cab. You're getting one of the 200 that's got his button turned on. So maybe they even have to come up with a regulation if you're more than 3 miles from the strip, you have to have your button on. That would make it force the drivers that are close to the call, right down the street, to take them.
It sounds to me like you're not exactly talking to us. You're talking to these gentlemen right here.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm trying to make you all understand how
I
it works,
understand,
so you
yes.
have an idea of
We're
what's
pretty
going on
helpless
and
here.
why
Such detail.
why something somehow needs to get done so that the public can get served, because that's what it's all about,
Yeah.
right?
Mr. Schwartz is a very smart guy, and he's listening to you, and he's probably nodding his head, I don't know, but he's listening.
My understanding is that you might need some more training on how to operate the meter. And the office staff will be happy to do that for you.
Yeah, okay, but this, I'm just saying, when I push the button.
Gentlemen, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Agenda item 7, update from Allegiant Stadium. Patrick Garvey.
Mr. Chair, board members, members of the public, we had a representative scheduled from Allegiant Stadium who canceled a few days ago. This item was a result of the initial, I believe it was a concert that they had at the stadium, one of their first events that was notoriously disorganized as far as transportation goes. So we wanted to get their perspective on what they might intend to be doing or what industry might want to discuss with them. They've since had another event that I understand might have been a little bit less chaotic, but the representative was unable to make it.
Okay. Agenda item 8, update on administrator postings and selections.
I will defer that to you, Mr. Chair. I think you've had the most recent conversation.
Very good. As I indicated to the other members of the board at the last meeting, I have had a meeting with Director Reynolds on this matter. Director Reynolds advised me that they had a limited number of applicants and that they were going to repost the position to try to generate additional applications. He assured me that he knew that this was a priority item for the board and was attending to it, but that it was important to he and the governor that they find the right set of skills and commitment for the position, and that Mr. Decker would continue to trudge on with us until, yes, trudge on with us until that individual is, or those individuals are identified for our interview, and he reiterated that there would be opportunity for us to interview.
Mr. Chairman, you did a great job on continuing Mr. Decker's duties. Thank you.
Which was not necessarily my intent. Any questions or information on this item? I will commit to you, I will continue to keep in contact with Director Reynolds to push this along.
I do, how was this position being advertised? Do we know?
So I asked that. There were 2 levels that had been, there was internal advertising that was going on amongst agencies. And then the actual methodology, I do not know, but there is external advertising of it, for instance, in other jurisdictions, where there might be a deputy who might be interested in moving. And they were also using, which surprised me for a government, they were also using LinkedIn and other social media platforms to try to push out the candidacy, and they were actually trying to mine MINE LinkedIn recruiting technology. So it does not appear that it is a lack of effort. It's just an indication of not enough resumes yet being generated.
Gruber, you did hit on a key point, though, and I will add that Director Reynolds and I discussed the position in detail a few weeks ago. I think it was around the same time that the chair did as well, and discussed rewriting the posting. And so a new posting was extended with new language that was rewritten to try and be more attractive to the right candidate.
Any other questions on this item? Agenda item 9, Administrator's Report. 9A.
Okay, so the monthly report stats are included in the packet. I'm not going to read them out unless anybody would like me to. But I will mention that I've mentioned this before in previous board meetings. The agency's biggest issue right now, from my perspective, is recruiting. We have start dates for 3 new officers. I'll introduce Nancy Moran, who is filling Kristen's shoes for now as we finalize the paperwork on filling her position as well as the other management analyst position. We have another 2 or 3 officers in background or in some certain process, in a process of being hired, identified but not quite onboarded. So we're working on that diligently. I will draw your attention to the citations. I won't call out any violators, but I do think making it public amongst industries who's getting violations from the agency has some value. And then the citations that are issued are also listed there. Primarily right now we have taxi stand rotation violations as being the main finding of our enforcement team. We are still doing significant number of impounds, although those may have slowed down a little bit with the vacancies. We are trying to do visible deterrence, so officers are often in uniform, going out and talking to drivers and with visible presence at taxi stands, events, and properties. They've been directed to spend about 50% of their time doing unlawful ride for hires, impounds, cash rides, versus visible deterrence, and making sure that officers stay in the area if they don't have enough people to do safe undercover operations. With that, I'd be happy to. I think that's going to cover the chief investigator's report as well, since he is not here. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions from the board.
Any questions?
Start date for the new officers anytime soon?
Start dates, yes. So the 23rd, which is Monday. Well, so we had 1 officer start this week, 1 officer starting next Monday, and another officer starting on the 20th of September.
Anything further for the administrator? No. Ms. Rodriguez? And that gets item C to your stats, or did you have additional stats?
Item C, Nancy, do you have any stats you would like to discuss with the board? No. Okay. We've included them in the packet.
Right. Okay. Staff report from legal counsel.
Got nothing for you guys.
Okay. Mr. Rickard, anything?
No, sir.
Future agenda items. There's 2 items I'd like to suggest to my colleagues if they're amenable. Both are of a rulemaking nature. The first is I'd like to ask the administrator to work with the Attorney General's office to formulate a draft regulation providing for the method of selection of chair and vice chair and their respective duties. And a second rule request, Administrator, a little bit more of a lift than that. Only been to 3 meetings. 2 of those meetings, obviously, at least as legally trained, intervention practice needs some work out of this agency, in my view. The intervention regulations are the most dated of any public service entity, agency of the state. The agency hasn't done the updates that the Public Utilities Commission and the TSA have done on interventions. And I think it would be helpful if we started down the path of drafting updates to our intervention process. And I'm happy to provide some input to whoever is assigned to do that. Administrative, I think those two rulemakings would be helpful.
Acknowledge, we will work on it.
Okay. Any concerns or objections by board members on that?
No, I think it's a great idea.
Great. Any other future agenda items other board members would like placed on for next meeting? Hearing none, anything staff wants us to consider for next month yet?
We do not have anything that we would like to work on at this point. Although I reserve the right to bring something up if it
Oh, yeah,
comes
no,
up.
no, no. I just wondered if there was any heads up we needed. Okay. That concludes agenda item 9. Agenda item 10 is public comment. This matter is placed on the agenda pursuant to the open meeting law to accept information and comment from the public on matters within the jurisdiction of the board. No action may be taken by the board on these matters. Is there any member of the public who would care to provide any comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed. The final item, everybody's going, is I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
And I will second that motion.
We are adjourned.
We didn't vote.
Well, I just did. I have a motion and a second.
Hi, George. Good? I really enjoyed it. I can start Dan.
Come see me.
I've already talked to you. I got to get up the courage to talk to Jonathan now.
Listen, there's so much happening. You're welcome to come by anytime.
All right.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for your, oh, yes, thank you for your input. Thank you.